I am very excited to announce the 2023 Council Award winners. First, I will recognize the award that was a new award that we launched in 2022, which is Outstanding Corporate Philanthropy Leadership Award. And so this is to recognize an individual in corporate philanthropy who is doing high integrity work to advance the greater good. And this year's recipient is Dr. Marvin Carr, who is the director of the Center for Racial Equity at Walmart. Dr. Carr just exemplifies what we laid out in this award criteria, which includes leadership and courage and integrity, and that he builds trust easily. So our selection committee was wanted to particularly highlight that Dr. Carr has an unwavering commitment to integrity, an impressive ability to build partnerships that inspire those around him, and he empowers a whole host of stakeholders across the organization that he works for and within the philanthropic portfolio of grantees that they support. So he's done this in a variety of ways, fostering leadership for in DEI cohorts and much, much more. So I just want to say a hearty congratulations to you, Dr. Marvin Carr. When you see him, I think he's on this call, but I don't think we have him on video. So when you see him, please say congratulations. The next award winner that I'd like to recognize is a very long-standing award that the council has been giving since 1984, and that is the Scrivner Award. The Scrivner Award was established to honor an outstanding organization that's providing creative and innovative grant making that meets the moment. So this year's recipient of the Scrivner Award joins an illustrious group of institutions that many admire and whose lead many of us have followed. So please join me in congratulating the Chicago Community Trust. They are the recipient of the Scrivner Award for their funders collaborative called We Rise Together for Equitable and Just Recovery. So starting in 2020, the Chicago Community Trust pulled together this bold approach that's rooted in community priorities. So the community determines their priorities for economic growth in Black communities, Black neighborhoods, Latino and Latina neighborhoods, and it has resulted in over 30 development projects that are all grounded in equity. I'm sure that work continues. I can't wait to hear about all that it achieves over the years ahead. But for now, congratulations to the Chicago Community Trust. Now there's one more award to give. And I have the honor of introducing last year's recipient so that he can congratulate this award winner. This is the Distinguished Service Award, which goes to an individual whose contributions over their career in philanthropy are not only illustrious, but they are enduring. Charles Anderson won this award last year, and we are so proud to have him back with us so that he can introduce this year's award winner. Charles, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Kathleen. This is Charles Anderson. I'm from the San Juan Island Community Foundation, and was so happy to receive the award last year. And I just want to say how important that award was, not just personally, but in validating the work we do and validating our foundation. It's been a tremendous benefit to us. So today it is my distinct pleasure to introduce Ann Kubisch, the winner of the 2023 Council of Foundations Distinguished Service Award, which is presented to an individual who has demonstrated exemplary leadership, integrity, courage, and trust throughout their career in philanthropy. Ann has served the public good for over 40 years with a focus on community change and development, and in so doing, helped create the theory of change, which is a methodology used widely in both for-profit and philanthropies, with the goal of realizing impactful social change. Anne recently retired as president and CEO of the Ford Family Foundation in Roseburg, Oregon, which is an innovative private foundation serving communities in Oregon and Northern California. Anne led the development of the Ford Family Foundation from being a responsive grant maker to a nationally recognized advocate for rural communities that has provided thousands of community development grants and scholarships to students, and has grown the organization to managing annual grants of over $55 million and an endowment of $1.2 billion. She retired this past September, leaving the foundation poised for future success by leading the development of a 10-year transformative strategic plan covering the next 10 years. Anne received her master's degree in public and international affairs from Princeton University after receiving her Bachelor of Arts with honors from Tufts University, an education well-suited to her multinational upbringing. Anne is fluent in both French and Spanish and has, after jobs at the Patel Institute, the World Bank, and the Rockefeller Family Associates, she joined the New York-based International Ford Foundation. At the Ford Foundation, she served as deputy director of the Urban Poverty Program, managing a staff of 30 with a granting budget of $45 million. Her role at the Ford Foundation expanded internationally, with her relocating to Nigeria for 3 years to manage grant-making programs on rural development, human rights, women's reproductive health, and women's economic development throughout West Africa. Anne continued her career of service at the Aspen Institute, where she founded and directed the Roundtable on Community Change. Over the next 19 years, she worked to develop new methods to evaluate community development and was the author and editor of a number of books that most importantly explored new approaches to the theory, methods, and measures of evaluating community change. While at the Institute, she also developed a framework for promoting racial equity and co-authored a study of structural racism and community building. In 2013, Anne accepted the position of president and chief executive officer of the Ford Family Foundation, where she was able to bring together all of her background in community change, structural racism, and women's rights to have the Ford Family Foundation make sweeping impact on many of the rural communities in Oregon. Rather than just provide more community project grants, she believed that the philanthropic sector should attend far more to investing in the capacity of communities, the organizations and people that define and implement the change they want to see, and supporting those who advocate for policy and systems change that accomplish that work. We all might learn from Anne's playbook that truly listening to community voices, engaging with community members, and trusting them to lead their own way to long-term solutions that will create an optimum path to community development. In Anne's own words, expressed in a forthcoming article in the Foundation Review, community building is a philosophy, it's not an initiative. And so it is my distinct honor to give you Anne Kubisch, the 2023 Distinguished Service Awardee.
Thank you so much, Charles, for that really powerful and beautiful introduction of Anne. I feel like that hardly does it justice to capture all that you've been able to do. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mae Hong, and I'm proud to be a board member of the Council on Foundations. I have the privilege of asking Anne a few questions so that we can glean into some of the wisdom that she's gained over the years in order to be able to share that among our community. So as we heard from Charles's terrific introduction, and you've worn a lot of hats in philanthropy and been able to see foundations work from a lot of different perches. When you weave all of that together, what do you see as the most important role that philanthropy can play?
Well, thank you, Mae, for that. And I want to just first of all begin by thanking Charles for that incredible introduction and thanking the Council on Foundations for this incredible honor. I am overwhelmed by it. I actually looked through the list of previous recipients, and I can't believe that I am in the same ballpark as them. A few of them I worked for, Franklin Thomas and Barry Gaberman, and I worked with so many others. And so I just want to say thank you to the Council on Foundations, the selection committee, and for Charles's wonderful introduction. So Mae, that's such a great question. When I think about philanthropy, I have this visual image in my head. I think about the work that we do to try and improve the well-being of those who are least well off in our society, whether for economic or racial or geographic or social and structural issues. I think about it, the visual image I have in my head is of a double helix, the DNA double helix that's sort of anchored on two sides with these two sort of backbones, and then this interlacing between them. And on one side of the double helix, I think about the importance of high quality programs and services that we have learned for over the course of 50, 60, 70 years of social interventions are best practices that improve the well-being of kids, families, communities, and so on. And foundations do and should invest in those kinds of high quality programs. But the other side of the double helix is just as important. And that's the side that is about the capacity of people, organizations, communities to actually implement those high quality programs. And when I say capacity, what do I mean by that? I mean individual capacity, the capacity of leaders to be able to do their work well. I mean the organizational capacity, the capacity of our partners and grantees on the ground to do their work well. And that means that we have to be able to pay them enough, pay their staff enough money. The boards need to have good board development. They need to have internal operating procedures that allow them to evaluate and assess their work, and so on. And then I also mean community capacity. And this is a lot of the work that we at the Ford Family Foundation have been doing since over the course of our entire history here. It's really about building community capacity, helping people in communities come together in common cause to think about and dream about the future of their communities and work together to come up with plans and implement those plans. And and by community, I mean both place-based community, like in the Ford Family Foundation, we work in rural Oregon and Northern California and work very deeply in local communities. So I mean that in a place-based way, but I also mean it in terms of communities of interest. So people who have particular issues where they can come together around rights and social justice issues. And what I think the way I'm after 40 years of working in this field, I feel like the philanthropic community is very good at the former, investing in programs and services. And we have underattended a little bit in the investment in capacity at the individual, organizational, and community level. And I think that is a role that I would like to encourage us as philanthropy to continue to do and to do more of. Because when we do that, we not only ensure that the work is high quality and it achieves scale and impact, but also we make those places much more investable by others. So by the big public sector dollars. And so to me, that's a real role for philanthropy that we need to lift up and hold on to and champion.
Mm-hmm. That's terrific. Thank you, Anne. That's such a beautiful visual image of what philanthropy can do. So, we heard a lot about the work of the Ford Family Foundation in rural Oregon from Charles's introduction. And anyone who knows the work quickly realizes that you do so much more than make grants. What have you learned about the ways foundations can bring more to the table than just money?
Thanks for that question. That's such a great question. Yeah, I think that philanthropy, we as foundations have so many resources at our disposal, beyond our grant making capacity. And I'm not sort of poo-pooing our grant making capacity. It's absolutely critical that we can make grants to support good work. But what our money really also allows us to do is to create relationships with the people on the ground who are actually doing the work. And it's really about, we have such a privilege that we get access to brilliant, committed, hardworking people who are working every single day to try and make change. And we have to figure out how to genuinely listen to those people, hear them, build relationships with them. Because when we do that, then it is our job to figure out how we can tailor the awesome resources that we as philanthropy have at our disposal to help them and meet them where they are on the issues that they are really struggling with right now. And that means that, yes, our grant making is important, but we also have the ability to convene people. We have the ability to train. We have the ability to help them advocate or advocate ourselves for their issues. We have the ability to use our convening power, our flexible dollars to kind of grease the wheels so that the whole can become more than the sum of its parts. And I feel like one of the things that we have done at the Ford Family Foundation is we often talk about how it is our job to meet communities where they are. It is not their job to try and fit themselves into our box. Yes, we have guidelines. Yes, we have sideboards. But it is our job to go and make sure that we listen to the community and that we actually tailor our resources to their needs rather than expecting them to fit into our box.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I can tell by all the floating emojis that everything you're saying is really striking a chord with everyone on this call today. Can you give us a little bit of an example of what does this look like in practice? What are some things that you instituted to really bring this to life?
Well, thanks for asking that question. There's a lot that I could talk about, but I think what I would mention is that we created a new position in our foundation in, I think it was 2016, that we call field coordinators. So we have our headquarters in Roseburg, Oregon, and we work throughout rural Oregon and Northern California. And the distances are vast, and we do have good relationships across that region. But what we finally realized is that we needed to be hiring people from the communities that we serve. And so we have now currently 7 staff who are located throughout in various parts of our region, who are hired from their community, who have their longstanding relationships, deep on the ground knowledge of what's going on in their communities and their regions. And they're not program officers. They can refer people from their communities to our program officers, but their job is to do those other things that I was talking about earlier, to be the conveners, to be the community builders. We use the term community building a lot in our organization. We have a department called community building that is the home for these field coordinators. In fact, that was one of the things that attracted me to the Ford Family Foundation when I first applied for it, is there was actually a department called community building, which was really about putting into place some of this capacity building, relationship building, convening activities that I was talking about earlier. And so we decided to invest in hiring people from the communities where they live, work, play, pray, and so on. And that has given us so many deep relationships, so much ground truthing to our work.
Hey, thank you. I want to turn it to a little bit more of a personal reflective moment. What are you most proud of in your 40-year career?
Oh, goodness. I think what I would say is that I have just been incredibly fortunate because I have been able to work on my entire career has been focused on trying to improve the well-being of those who are least advantaged in our world for whatever reasons. And I have been able to do that from so many different perspectives. I have worked internationally in Latin America and Africa. I worked nationally with a focus on urban distressed communities. And now I've concluded my career working in rural Oregon and Northern California in a very place-based way on rural issues. And along the way, I've had sort of different geographic focuses, but I've also, I had a stint at the Aspen Institute that Charles mentioned, where I was able to do some research, trying to distill what we've been learning about how to improve outcomes for kids and families in the most distressed communities in our country, and do some research, some methodology, did some deep work on structural racism that I think helped the field to begin to think about that way back in the sort of around 2000, did some work around how to evaluate community building and so on. And so, but then I've also been able to work in this beautiful place-based foundation in Oregon and really put all of that I had learned into practice in communities, in real time, in a real place, with all of the real capacity constraints and all of the real political issues that people deal with on the ground. And so I just feel like I've been able to approach the same question and the same challenge from so many different directions, and have tried to pull that together, and was able to do it in the last 10 years of my work in Oregon. And one of the things I've just been able to translate so much of what I've learned from West Africa, or from learning about structural racism, to rural Oregon. You know, the work that we did on structural racism allowed me to think about the structural causes of inequity for rural communities. We have a kind of a structural urbanism in this country as well. And so people are disadvantaged for geographic reasons as well. And I've been able to sort of translate all of that, and it's been a true privilege.
Thank you. Thank you. I love that. It sounds like it was really a capstone opportunity these last 10 years that you've had in Oregon. So as you can imagine, this question has a flip side. Do you have any disappointments or regrets or anything you would do differently?
Oh, sure. I have my share of all kinds of things I did wrong all along the way. Let me think if I can tell a couple of stories that would illustrate a couple of the things that are kind of on my mind as I reflect. I think one of them that I would tell is that when I was at the other Ford Foundation, the New York-based Ford Foundation, one of the things that we decided to develop was an initiative that was focused on community revitalization. And we worked in 4 urban areas across the country, and we were trying to apply kind of the state-of-the-art knowledge about what it takes to revitalize distressed inner-city communities, focusing on, you know, across social, economic, political issues, and bringing them all together in a comprehensive way with a community building orientation. And what I think we learned from that is that it's very difficult for a national foundation to actually work locally in community. And this goes back to some of the things I was saying earlier, it's very hard to have deep relationships in a local community when you're sitting in New York City at the Ford Foundation. And we designed some initiatives, but it was hard to make them apply locally and to be relevant in the local context. And so what I would say, the lesson that I think I've learned from that is, we as foundations, we don't have to do everything. We have to choose our lane. And national foundations can do certain things that local foundations can't do. And local foundations, like us at the Ford Family Foundation in Oregon, we have deep relationships with our communities, but it's very hard for us to be strong advocates at the national level. And so what I think I learned from that is to understand what your comparative advantage is and use it and make the most of it. Do we have time for another example? Because I can share another example.
Yes, we do. Please.
Okay. I'll share an example that actually has a very happy ending from our work in Oregon. There's a small town in Douglas County, our home county, called Yoncalla, which has got a population of 1,000. And one of our program officers was our program officer who was working on early child development was talking to the principal and superintendent of the school at Yoncalla. And he was saying that the children in Yoncalla aren't coming to school, aren't coming to kindergarten ready to learn. And it was really affecting their ability as a school all the way through their entire K-12 experience. In fact, a lot of the parents weren't even sending their kids to kindergarten. And so we thought, well, we know a lot about early child development. We can figure out how to put into place the kinds of programs that are best practices from across the field. And so we started, and we came in with this invitation from the superintendent with great ideas. And this was way back in 2012, 2013. And what I would say is the first couple of years got no traction at all. We had some activities that we thought would bring parents into the school, and they didn't come, they didn't show up. And so we did what I think was the right next step, which was to ask the parents, what is it that how do you feel about the school? Why aren't you bringing your kids to school? What is it that's going on with you? And we learned that a lot of the parents had lousy educational experiences themselves, didn't trust the school, so that we had to start with building trust between the parents and the school. It started with a Dr. Seuss night. And then that was in 2014. By 2015, we had a parent room where they could drop in. And we were really pleased about that. We took our board to go see the parent room. And all of us will never forget this. When we took our board, there was one parent and one child. And our board looked at us and said, really? This is the great solution you've got? But I want to fast forward to 2019 as we built the relationships and built the connections. By 2019, there was a state-of-the-art pre-K at the school, a Head Start, a early Head Start, special education. There's a waiting list for the pre-K classroom. We took our board there in 2019, and I'm going to say some tears flowed when they saw how beautiful this was. And now 2023, if you talk to the folks in Yoncalla, they will tell you that experience in that school has changed the culture of the school and changed the culture of the community, where the school is the heart of the community. And my lesson there is honor the pace of the community, listen, honor them, and be willing to understand that this is a 10-year process we're talking about now. But this school is now the center of this community. And I joke with my colleagues that I have the title of an op-ed I want to write is called "It Takes a Child to Raise a Village," because it was through the intervention around early childhood that this community has come together.
I love that. Thank you so much. That is such a beautiful story. Well, I feel like we could tap into your wisdom all day, but I do want to bring us to a close. Whenever I have a chance to interview a grant maker, I always like to end with what I call a flash round. And this is a set of questions that I'm going to ask you, and I just want a one-word answer. One word, maybe two, but no explanation, just one word. So the first question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you think, with 10 being the most positive, how well is philanthropy moving in the right direction?
Really, only one word? Only one? A 7.
What's your favorite philanthropy buzzword?
Well, I'm going to pick up on what Kathleen Enright was talking about at the beginning. I think trust-based philanthropy is absolutely the key to everything.
All right, great. What person or organization has most influenced you as a grant maker?
I would say that person is Harold Richman, who used to be the head of the Chapin Hall Center for Children at the University of Chicago. He was the co-chair, along with Lisbeth Shore, of the Aspen Roundtable on Community Change, which I worked at. And I learned so much from him, especially about this issue, that you have to listen to the community. It has to be, whatever your work is, it has to be grounded in community. It has to take community context in mind. And that man was just a beautiful mentor to me.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Final question. What one word do you hope people will use to describe you as a grant maker when they say Ann Kubisch?
Listener synthesizer. I think that I hope people feel like I have tried very hard to listen to what they have said, the wisdom of their communities, and been able to synthesize that with what we've learned about what what works and how to improve well-being and filtering that through what our foundation can do. So maybe synthesizer is the right word, synthesizing from so many different directions.
That's wonderful. Ann Kubisch, congratulations on this year's Distinguished Grantmaker Award from the Council on Foundations, and thank you for your decades-long career of service to the field.
Thank you very much, Mae, for this conversation. I've really enjoyed it. And thank you so much to the Council on Foundation for this incredible award. I am so honored.